We found out that Blake Lively's team, according to her attorney, is actually planning to file an amended complaint in their lawsuit against Justin Baldoni and others. According to her attorney, Michael Gottlieb, that is going to include new claims from Blake Lively, and they're going to be bringing this lawsuit against new defendants. Parties, of course, meeting for the first time in court today. It was about a 90-minute hearing. The same tactic that they're doing over and over again of trying to manipulate the courts to get what they want.
Judge Lyman had already given Blake Lively's legal team an extension until Valentine's Day on February 14th, but they were still not happy. They went back and requested an extension until March 5th, but Judge Lyman refused despite their best efforts. Blake's team. They explained that they planned to bring additional witnesses to testify against Justin Baldoni in order to support their plea. Jenny Slate, who co-starred with Baldoni and ultimately played his sister, was one significant testimony they considered. Jenny, Blake Lively's friend and co-star, was a well-known Blake booster who had previously defended her, claiming that the charges against Blake were baseless. She openly supported Blake and said, "I fully support her as she takes action against those who orchestrated an attack on her reputation. Blake is a leader, loyal friend, and trustworthy emotional support system for many of us. The material that has come to light about the attacks on her is very distressing and harmful." When it came time to testify, Jenny surprised everyone, including Blake, even though it first seemed like she was ready to back up Blake's allegations in court. "I stand with her and commend her for her bravery," Jenny remarked. Despite her reluctance, Jenny allegedly denied direct involvement and distanced herself from the issue entirely. Many speculated, however, that this was only a ruse to influence the case by include additional women, giving the impression that Blake's assertions were more widely accepted. After this method failed, Blake's legal team had to quickly devise a new plan, which is why they asked for another extension. Blake's attorneys persisted in attempting to subpoena her, figuring that her awkward interactions with Baldoni would help their case. Judge Lyman didn't buy it when he asked why they now required more time. Blake's legal team responded in a long and very complicated way, saying they needed additional time to add new parties to the complaint. Street Relations, Jed Wallace's company, was one of those parties. According to Blake's team, Wallace had filed a separate 10-page lawsuit in a Texas federal court that allegedly overlapped with their case. On the surface, it appeared logical that they needed more time to handle his case. But it wasn't that simple. Brian Friedman, Justin Ballin's lawyer, was ready to go in with receipts and other tangible proof that Blake's team had denied his team's request for an extension during the terrible wildfires in January, while Baldwin's team had been dealing with a real catastrophe. Blake's lawyers refused to grant them any leeway. The Wayfarer legal team representing Baldwin and his production company expressed little concern over Blake's team gaining extra time. They essentially said, "Take your extension, we don't even care." But they also made it clear that any extra time for Blake's team meant extra time for them as well. Friedman exposed their hypocrisy by saying that even though the Lively party had refused to grant an extension when we requested one during the Los Angeles wildfires, we had no objection to their request. In other words, if Blake's team was granted an extension, then Baldwin's team would also require one. They extended their own response deadline to April 15th, pushed their own response deadline later on to ensure a fair playing field, right? But Brian Friedman wasn't done yet. With a cool, collected demeanor, he revealed a serious misrepresentation by Blake's team, which had been attempting to blame Jed Wallace for the delay by claiming that his legal action was the reason they needed more time. Friedman wasn't going to let that story go, so he produced the receipts, which showed that Blake had actually filed a lawsuit against Wallace in Texas. Conveniently, the Lively party failed to disclose that Monsieur Lively initiated the current lawsuit in Texas. On January 21st, about 2 weeks prior to Mr. Wallace's response with his federal case, she filed a lawsuit against him in Texas state court. The astonished hush in the courtroom seemed to indicate that Blake's team had been caught trying to con the judge and that Brian wasn't going to let them get away with it. Their plea for a month-long extension was immediately refused by Judge Lon, who was not amused and instead gave them one more day to file their amendment. Blake's legal team gave out a discouraged look that was difficult to ignore. Their shoulders were stooped down and their heads were dropped, as though they had just realized they were out of tricks. Lehman explained, when it appeared that Blake's side could not get much worse, they recalled how Blake's legal team had made a valiant effort to have Brian Friedman sign a gag order that would prevent him from speaking to the media. The court promptly shut it down after that approach backfired miserably. Well done, but no. Friedman was allowed to continue discussing the matter in public after the judgment, which was precisely what Blake's side had been attempting to prevent. Blake wasn't going to let his staff to drag this case out any further because they hadn't offered any good explanation for why they needed additional time. Blake's team had planned to quiet Friedman, but the court had essentially granted him permission to continue revealing every uncomfortable truth. This judicial dispute became an even more public spectacle after every major loss. Justin Baldwin's legal team just launched a webpage dedicated to the case, an action that caused confusion at Blake's side. Everyone was taken aback over the weekend when Baldwin's team unveiled a newly designed website including an updated legal complaint, 168 pages of meticulously compiled events, including, and perhaps most damning of all, never-before-seen messages allegedly exchanged between Blake and Baldoni at that time. Now that the case is being litigated not only in court but also in the court of public opinion, the website effectively destroyed Blake's team's attempt to keep the details hidden behind closed doors. It was more than simply a location for court records. It was a complete digital archive of evidence receipts and video, all accessible to the general public. Actor Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively's spouse, has now been further implicated in the dispute. One alleged text from Reynolds to Baldoni demonstrates how thrilled he was about it at first, and it ends with him telling us, "This is going to be incredible." The more Blake's squad attempted to fight back, the more the walls closed in and the odds seemed to be against them, leaving them in an even worse situation. I happen to be love. Although Justin's message at the time appeared to be supportive and nice, its meaning has completely changed in the context of the continuing legal battle. Already suffering after a series of legal failures, Blake's legal team made a desperate attempt to get the website taken down. The court rejected their plea that Justin Baldwin's team should not be allowed to make such material publicly available. They had a simple explanation. If Blake and her attorneys had no issue going to the public and demanding that Justin be quiet now that he was retaliating, why should Baldwin's team be silenced? By framing their side of the argument and making it apparent that they were prepared to compete in the court of public opinion when it was convenient for them, Blake's team had already brought their fight to the public, utilizing prominent media sources such as the New York Times. Blake's legal team must be wondering how much worse things can get given how every move they've taken has backfired, and every attempt to take charge of the matter has slipped through their fingers. The probability of losing this litigation increases with each unsuccessful tactic, and let's not overlook the stakes. Losing $400 million would be terrible, even for two well-known Hollywood personalities like Blake and Ryan, and would require them to thoroughly reassess their future investments, endorsements, and projects. The action now involves potential financial devastation in addition to legal bills and reputation. Whether Blake will lose or not isn't the true question at this moment. Rather, it's how much longer her squad can endure before they give up entirely, under the pressure of every choice, fresh piece of information, and tactical error. It seems like they are losing control of this situation. What do you anticipate happening? Is Blake's legal struggle over, or will her team be able to make things better? To ensure you don't miss any changes, please remember to subscribe and leave your opinions in the comments area.